Welcome back to Worth the Effort Woodworking. And today I'm going to be turning a bowl from a blank I kind of have in my stack of this thing might be just a bit too weird to deal with for in the production cycle. So I've just kind of been batting it around the shop for a long time. So we're going to turn this one. But to make this video a little bit different from just all the other random turning videos, I thought I'd have a little talk, I guess, towards the end. For those of y'all that are kind of thinking in the back of your mind that wood turning might be a good side hustle or weekend business or retirement plan or maybe a midlife crisis career redirection, we're going to be talking about the importance of bowl blanks and other kinds of blanks in creating some stability to your income. And that'll be at the end of the video. But for now, let's get this on the lathe and make some shavings and throw some of this spalting into the wind. So, I hope you enjoyed that, and in a little bit of movie magic, I went over, I picked up all those shavings, I reassembled them, and we had the bowl back to its original condition so that you could have a before and after feature. But as I said at the beginning, I wanted to have a discussion to kind of set my stuff off a little bit. And for some reason, a lot of people who follow me are kind of curious about this idea of using wood turning as either a second income, a retirement income. Maybe they have a midlife crisis and they want a complete career change. And there's this romantic idea of the soul artist in the corner of their workshop turning away all day long and then selling their wares at art markets or in galleries or something like that, and able to earn a nice living doing it that way. Nice, romantic, calm, easy way to spend your life. And let me tell you, that's a fallacy. I actually do not know any professional wood turners that make their entire living from the turning side of their craft. There are a few people I know in Europe that are dedicated spindle turners, but most of those are in a family business or generations of business, and they have a back catalog of furniture companies and other places that come to them to turn. I need 1,000 legs, I need 1,000 stair banisters, that kind of stuff. Or they have a long reputation out there, so that long earned reputation out there with restoration places where they're setting stuff off and doing one-offs identical to the vintage stuff. But the thing is, they had the name out there, or they were actually able to come into the name or become part of the business in their apprenticeship and progress through, and they make a lower middle class income at that point. Nobody I know is making higher upper middle class incomes unless they were so good at marketing and the business side of their turning business that they develop a name for themselves, a recognizable name, so that not only could they charge more because it's a name brand item, but all of a sudden they could sell other things based on their name, a lot of times to other turners. Maybe it's a finish or tools or something like that, stuff that they could outsource and kind of become the spokesman for. And there are a few people out there I know that are doing really well based on the name, the image they created from their work, which opens up the merchandising, the teaching opportunities, the lecture opportunities, all that other kind of stuff that comes in there is the majority of their income, even though the small wood turning is where their imagery and name came from. That kind of option isn't open to somebody that's just picking up the craft and wants to start their business. And a lot of times if you're starting later in life, you don't have those 20 years to develop the name. So a lot of people I know, they lower middle class, might be the upper echelon, but they kind of just get by, mainly because they have another source of income. Maybe it's a retirement, Social Security, a spouse, or something like that, where their costs are cut in half so that they can survive that way. Me, myself, turning has always just been a portion of the business, of my income. Earlier years, it was a larger portion. As I've gone along in social media and content creation and stuff, it's coming down a little bit. I will tell you, 2020, we'll get onto that later. It's a totally different year, totally different environment, but it could be an opportunity if you are interested in getting started now rather than later. And I'll talk about that later in a second. But if you're actually wanting to be that soul artist in your garage, turning stuff like that, it's going to be the little bit more artistic stuff that you can sell in art galleries, art markets. You can go set up your 10 by 10 booth, all your merchandise, and sell it on the weekends at various places. And to be successful at that caliber of merchandising, I'm telling you, it's more about inventory control than it is the stuff you're actually producing. Now here's a general schedule I go on. You know, the end of the year, after the holiday season, you have January, February, March, and sometimes in April. You're not going to have very many markets, if any at all. I oftentimes would work farmers markets just to get some, cash for small bills and stuff like that. But most of your income after the holiday season, you take that big chunk, you invest it, you pay off your bills in advance, and you go as far as you can. The hope is that that is enough money to cover you until the September of the following year, when you can start depending upon more of the holiday season income. But it's kind of a dangerous situation, dangerous scenario, and I do know people that are very successful in where they only work 1 or 2 markets a year and they spend the entire year planning for it. But to me, that's very risky, because situations just like it happened to me this past year. You know, that Thanksgiving weekend gets rained out, so that market's gone. Then something happens that, you know, puts you out for a month, and your entire holiday season's gone. You just never know when you put all your eggs in one basket. But if you have good inventory control, you don't have to. You can do stuff better. And here's what I'm talking about: inventory control. Beginning of the year, those first 3 to 6 months, your entire process, if you're working like me, is to develop up your backstock of bulb lengths for this year and hopefully the next year. If you don't have at least 2 years of material, you're limiting yourself to what you can do. Now, a typical market, a rule I have is you want to sell 10% of whatever you bring to the market to sell, okay? 10% turnover per weekend, and you'll do pretty well. If you sell more than 10%, that tells you you didn't bring enough inventory and you didn't charge enough, okay? If you sell less than 10%, it means you probably didn't have enough variety of inventory, or maybe your prices were too high for that market. And that variety is a problem that I struggle with, because you know, you go out and you harvest a tree. You got the long tree out there. You section out the pith, so you have a top section and bottom section. You cut that into 5 bulb lengths. Over the top section, that's 5 large bulb lengths, and if you can core it, you got a medium size and a small bulb length. So one side can return 15 bulb lengths. If you're smart, you do one side of that tree as standard bulbs, and maybe the other side of every second or third tree as live edge bulbs. Or actually, if you did every other one, I think live edges probably sell better in this environment, because it's somewhat of a fad going on. But that one tree can return you 30 bulb lengths. Plus, then you have those little side pieces that I use for my little $20 bulbs. Now, thinking of what I did for a lot of times is I would dry those 30 bulb lengths, and then I would turn them all to their finished state so I could have stuff to take to the market. That was a mistake, because I then spent that entire week turning the same item. So if I had a customer come in, if they weren't looking for that item, I was out of sales. What would have been a better option for me is take those 30 bulb lengths and maybe turn 2 large, 2 mediums, and 2 smalls. Have a little couple match sets. And then set the other size indefinitely up on my drying rack. And that's kind of something you can tell if a wood turner is serious about their craft and selling in these art markets, is if you go to their shop and they have some section where there are hundreds or even thousands of bowls drying, fully dried, or just sitting in that dried state. Because now, if you want to think about it, instead of spending all that time turning those 30 bowls, I only turn those 6. I have inventory from that tree that I can merchandise. So any customers that like that walnut bowl, that pecan bowl, that mesquite bowl, they can find one in one of those 3 sizes and maybe a variety of designs. But then I can spend the next week doing the same thing to an entire different tree, different species, that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden, out of each tree, I have pretty much an immediate, or as immediate as can come out of my little kiln of the ones I know I'm going to turn as quickly as possible, to go straight off to sell right away. The rest can just air dry on that rack. And if they stay there for 10 years, who cares? But the thing is, the moment that large pecan, medium pecan, small pecan sells, well, that next week I can go grab 2 from that stack, because I knew that one sold. I turned 2 of the large, medium pecans, because once you get it to this state and it's dried, honestly, that's, with a little experience, that's less than an hour's worth of work. Just rough out the cut out the shape, do some sanding, do some finishing. So at the next market, instead of having those 3 bowls, I have the 6. If they sell out, the next week I'll get more, because that's what is moving. But if I have 6 and they don't sell that weekend, the next weekend, the following weekend, well, I'm not building up that inventory. I'm not wasting that small 10 by 10 tent with more of the same stuff. And I can bring in other stuff. Remember, a sign that you didn't make your 10%, you had too high a price, you didn't have a variety. Now, here's something else. All the time you're going to come up with people and say, hey, I like this, but do you have it like this? Or can you do that? Or anything like that. My standard response is, as long as I have the bulb blank. But if I don't have the bulb blank immediately, well, I need to go harvest a tree, dry it, and that might take a year or 2 for me to get it to you. Is that going to be okay with you? Nobody says yes. But if you have that back stock of inventory, I can come out and say, sure, this market meets next week. Leave me a 50% deposit on it. I'll have it turned. I'll customize it with that carving you want. Have it to you the next time we're here. Will that work for you? Or I could even mail it to you as soon as I'm done. It's the back stock of inventory, all those bowl blanks, that gives you some stability and some flexibility and broadens out the amount of stuff and the variety of stuff you can do. So I mentioned earlier that this might be the year, if you wanted to get into the craft, to do it, because I can almost guarantee the 2020 selling holiday season is going to be crap. FYI, for future posterity purposes, I'm filming this in June of 2020. We just came, some states are opening up out of the lockdown, some aren't. We don't know if there's going to be a second wave going on, but here's one thing I do know. We are either in a very bad recession or the beginning of a depression. And a lot of people are not going to want to be going out. The customers that do come out to the markets in October, November, December, they're generally in history, if you're coming out of a depression, people are going to be buying luxury items, impulse items like that. They're going to be a little bit more frugal, which means the stuff that's going to be selling are going to be the stuff that you're charging less, even though you have the same amount of labor on it. No matter how I look at it, I don't see this holiday season being great, either because we're in another lockdown or restricted access, or a lot of elderly people who go to the markets and spend all the money. They're not going to be wanting to go into crowds for whatever reason, or the climate is people aren't going to be spending money on frivolous stuff to give to a family, friend, or relative that might be out of work. That just kind of seems wrong, doesn't it? Which gives you the opportunity. If you could maybe not make as much finished material and focus more on developing up a huge drying rack or wall, or filling up your attic or a shed outside with bowl blanks, box blanks, spindle blanks, all that kind of stuff that can give you a huge variety. Have 10 large pecan bowl blanks, 10 medium, 10 small. Do the same thing for walnuts, cherries, maples, sycamores, all those kind of stuff. If you can develop up that, not only will you have a lot of practice in production work, a lot of skill gained in your tool control, you'll still be able to do some finished stuff for the holiday events that you will attend and the gifts you want to be able to give. But you'll have developed a back catalog so that 2021 you will have a lot more options to succeed. And I want you to notice how little I talked about the craft. This was all business management, inventory management, marketing, forecasting. Business related skills are what's going to make you successful. It has so little to do with your skill standing at that lathe. I hope this little talk or discussion helped you out a little bit. You gained a little bit. But even as dour as that thinking was, I do want you to remember that it is always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.